By May 1941, Britain and Germany had been at war for more than 18 months. At sea in the Atlantic Ocean, Germany's submarines were sinking British shipping, and Britain's Royal Navy was battling to counter this U-boat menace. In spring 1941, a new German combatant entered the fray, the 50,000-ton battleship Bismarck. For Britain, winning the war at sea was key to both protecting the nation from invasion and to any future Allied victory. Keeping shipping lanes open was vital.
Nazi Germany's leaders knew that cutting Britain's sea lines of communication would be an important strategic aim. In January 1939, Adolf Hitler approved Plan Z, which would have created a large German surface fleet and a large submarine force. But the plan would have taken until the late 1940s to be completed, and assumed that there would be no imminent war with Britain. When Britain declared war following Germany's invasion of Poland, Plan Z was quickly abandoned. The demands of a global conflict would force the Royal Navy to spread its ships across the world, but it would still outnumber the German Kriegsmarine. Construction of the battleship Bismarck had begun in July 1936, and so the project survived the cancellation of Plan Z. Launched in February 1939, Bismarck was a formidable warship. Armed with 8 huge 15-inch guns and with dozens of smaller artillery pieces, she was protected by an armoured belt more than 12 inches thick. Despite this heavy armour and armament, Bismarck was capable of a top speed of 30 knots and a range of almost 9,000 nautical miles. By the spring of 1941, Bismarck was ready to mount her first operation. Accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen, Bismarck's mission was to break out into the Atlantic to raid Britain's sea lanes.
On the 18th to the 19th of May, Bismarck and Prince Eugen left port at Gortenhafen in the Baltic Sea. Soon after, they were spotted by a neutral Swedish warship and by Swedish aircraft. Thanks to a tip-off to the local British naval attaché, the British Admiralty was soon informed, and when the 2 German ships halted on the Norwegian coast, they were photographed by British Spitfire reconnaissance aircraft.
Early on the 22nd of May, the German ships left Norway, heading for the Atlantic Ocean via the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland. In response, the Royal Navy dispatched the famous old battlecruiser HMS Hood and the brand new battleship HMS Prince of Wales to intercept. Later that evening, Admiral John Tovey, commanding the Royal Navy's home fleet, put to sea in the battleship HMS King George V, with the aircraft carrier HMS Victorious and escorts. On the 23rd of May, the British heavy cruiser HMS Suffolk, on patrol in the Denmark Strait, sighted Bismarck off the coast of Greenland. Suffolk was later joined by HMS Norfolk, another heavy cruiser. Bismarck opened fire on Norfolk, but didn't score any hits.
At dawn on the 24th of May, HMS Hood and HMS Prince of Wales intercepted Bismarck and Prince Eugen. Admiral Lancelot Holland in HMS Hood decided to attack immediately. The Battle of Denmark Strait began.
At first, the German ships held their fire. As salvos of British heavy shells started landing around Bismarck, Bismarck's gunnery officer requested permission from Admiral Lütjens to open fire. After asking several times without answer, Bismarck's captain, Ernst Lindemann, replied, "I'm not letting my ship get shot out from under my arse. Open fire." The German fire soon proved deadly. After just a few salvos, a 15-inch shell from Bismarck struck Hood, igniting an enormous plume of flame and triggered a catastrophic explosion. The blast broke Hood's back, and she sank in a matter of minutes. More than 1,400 crew were killed, including Admiral Holland. There were only 3 survivors.
One of the 3 survivors was Ted Briggs, who was on Hood's compass platform when the ship was struck.
Just as we were altering course, that the next salvo hit us. And that virtually penetrated down into X and Y magazines, the 2 after magazines. I personally didn't hear any explosion at all. Again, the ship shuddered and we were all thrown off our feet. And all I saw was a gigantic sheet of flame which shot round the front of the compass platform.
In HMS Prince of Wales, gunnery proved frustrating. The weather and sea state put her turret rangefinders out of action, and in recent gunnery training, Prince of Wales had had mechanical issues with her guns, and so sailed for battle with a number of civilian technicians on board. During this fight with Bismarck, several of Prince of Wales' guns failed again, reducing her fighting power. Despite these problems, Prince of Wales scored a number of hits on Bismarck. 1 severed fuel lines and another flooded a boiler room. These hits weren't fatal, but they had important consequences. With Hood sunk, and having taken several heavy hits herself, Prince of Wales disengaged. The battle lasted barely 15 minutes, and cost Britain one of its most prestigious warships.
As Bismarck's crew worked to repair her battle damage, her commanders faced a decision. The shell hits from Prince of Wales had compromised Bismarck's range and speed, and the oil leak left a highly visible slick on the sea's surface. Bismarck could not now complete her raiding mission. The ship needed to dock for repairs. Perhaps aware that returning to Germany would mean fighting their way back past the Royal Navy, Bismarck's officers set course for France.
Stung by the loss of HMS Hood, the Royal Navy cranked up its effort to find and destroy Bismarck. With Admiral Tovey coming from Scapa Flow with HMS King George V and Victorious, other units were pulled in. Key among them were the old battleship HMS Rodney, pulled from Atlantic convoy duties, as well as the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal and the light cruiser HMS Sheffield, redeployed from the Mediterranean. HMS Sheffield was a town-class cruiser, very similar to HMS Belfast. By the time of the hunt for the Bismarck, Sheffield had already seen action in Norway and the Mediterranean. She would go on to numerous other battles and would fight alongside HMS Belfast at the Battle of North Cape in the Arctic in 1943.
The Royal Navy faced a formidable challenge. Though damaged, Bismarck was still fast enough to escape back to France. The Royal Navy had to find and sink Bismarck before she could reach German air cover. But first, they had to find a way to slow the German ship.
Late on the 24th of May, the aircraft carrier HMS Victorious launched an airstrike by Fairey Swordfish. These biplane bombers flew into an intense barrage of anti-aircraft fire from Bismarck as the ship manoeuvred violently to avoid the Swordfish's torpedoes. Only one torpedo hit the ship and did little damage, but the evasive manoeuvres compromised some of Bismarck's earlier battle damage repairs and forced the ship, for a while at least, to slow. In the early hours of the 25th of May, Bismarck managed, without realising it, to shake off her pursuers. Believing he was still being shadowed, however, Admiral Lütjens and Bismarck sent a long radio message to German naval headquarters, reporting the destruction of Hood and the damage caused by Prince of Wales. This message was intercepted by British radio stations, and direction-finding techniques allowed Bismarck's bearing to be plotted. But due to a plotting error at sea, several British ships reversed course. This opened a wide gap between Bismarck and her pursuers before the error was corrected. By the 26th of May, it looked like Bismarck might escape to Brest, a port on the west coast of France. That morning, a Royal Air Force Coastal Command Catalina flying boat spotted Bismarck 700 miles northwest of Brest. She would be under German air cover in less than a day.
By now, many British ships had been forced to abandon the chase through lack of fuel. The battleships King George V and Rodney were still pursuing, but again it fell to an aircraft carrier to slow Bismarck down. HMS Ark Royal was stationed in the Mediterranean when she was ordered to join in the hunt for Bismarck. Not long after the Catalina sighting, swordfishers from Ark Royal also spotted Bismarck.
On the afternoon of the 26th of May, Ark Royal launched her swordfishes to attack the German battleship. But this attack ended in farce. Ark Royal's pilots hadn't been briefed that the light cruiser HMS Sheffield was shadowing Bismarck. And so, when they discovered a large ship, the swordfish dived to attack. Sheffield's captain ordered his anti-aircraft gunners to hold their fire and prepared to evade torpedoes as the swordfish struck. Fortunately, these torpedoes had been fitted with a new type of detonator, which proved to be unreliable, and several torpedoes exploded harmlessly. One flight of swordfishes, recognising HMS Sheffield, held off from attacking the British cruiser, and before flying away offered, by signal lamp, a sheepish apology to the ship, sorry for the kipper. After safely recovering her aircraft, Ark Royal's crew rushed to rearm the swordfishes with torpedoes fitted with conventional detonators. In the evening of the 26th of May, in appalling weather, Ark Royal launched a second airstrike. Rendezvousing with HMS Sheffield, the light cruiser gave the aircraft Bismarck's bearing and distance. In heavy cloud and icy conditions, the swordfishes set off to hunt the German battleship. After a few minutes, the swordfishes dived out of the cloud and commenced their attack. Skimming the waves, the swordfishes released their torpedoes as Bismarck blazed away with both her main guns and her numerous anti-aircraft guns. One torpedo, credited to pilot John Moffat, struck Bismarck aft, jamming her port rudder. Bismarck's crew made frantic efforts to free the rudder. They failed. The consequences were stark. Locked in a slight turn to port, Bismarck could not now reach the safety of the French coast. Late in the evening of the 26th of May, Admiral Lütjens signalled to headquarters, "Ship unmanoeuvrable. We shall fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer."
With Bismarck unable to steer, Admiral Tovey could now plan his attack with HMS Rodney and HMS King George V. Rather than attack immediately, Tovey decided to attack at first light.
Through the night of the 26th, 27th of May, British destroyers and the Polish destroyer Piorun harassed Bismarck with gunfire and torpedo attacks. Though not causing any serious damage, the destroyer's presence kept Bismarck's crew on edge, wearing down their morale and forcing them to expend ammunition. On the morning of the 27th of May, the stage was set for Bismarck's final battle, Her main opponents were 2 British battleships. HMS Rodney had been flogging her worn-out engines to the brink of breakdown to stay in the chase, but now she had brought her 9 massive 16-inch guns to bear, alongside the 10 14-inch guns of King George V. At first, Bismarck still seemed dangerous, landing heavy shells close to HMS Rodney, but Rodney's firepower soon tipped the balance. Rodney's fire knocked out Bismarck's forward turrets and destroyed her bridge, killing most of her senior officers. Before long, the combined British fire knocked out all of Bismarck's main guns and left her defenceless. As the British ships closed in, they pumped shells into Bismarck's superstructure. Fires broke out, and Bismarck's interior became a scene of utter carnage. On deck, the crews of Bismarck's smaller guns were killed and maimed by explosions and lethal shell splinters. With their ship now dead in the water, flooding and listing, Bismarck's surviving crew set scuttling charges and attempted to abandon ship. The British battleships disengaged, running low on fuel, so the heavy cruiser HMS Dorsetshire was ordered to torpedo Bismarck. The German ship was a blazing wreck. A few minutes later, Bismarck capsized and disappeared beneath the surface.
Dorsetshire remained at the scene, and with the destroyer HMS Maori attempted to recover survivors. In all, the British rescued more than 100 survivors before a U-boat alarm forced the British ships to leave. A handful more were rescued later by German vessels. More than 2,000 members of Bismarck's crew were killed during the battle or died in the water.
Joe Brooks was an 18-year-old midshipman, a junior officer in HMS Dorsetshire, and he was present at the sinking of the Bismarck. When Dorsetshire moved to rescue survivors, Brooks could see hundreds of German sailors struggling in the water. Many of them were wounded or suffering from hypothermia. Moved by an impulse of compassion, Brooks climbed down a rope into the sea in an attempt to rescue a German sailor who had lost both arms and was gripping a rope with his teeth. Brooks was unable to save the man and was nearly left in the water himself when Dorsetshire suddenly had to leave the area. He later painted this watercolour. It captures Bismarck listing and ablaze with its guns knocked out. Perhaps a reminder of his own experience, Brooks's painting includes a detail of a man jumping into the sea and of tiny figures in the water. Brooks's painting is a reminder that while we often think of naval battles as pitting ships against ships, the real battle is fought between the crews, as sailors on both sides struggle to survive the dangers of the sea and the violence of the enemy.
Sinking Bismarck was a vital naval victory for Britain. It ensured that Britain's merchant shipping would not be menaced by an enemy capital ship, able to outgun or outrun most of the old British battleships that were escorting convoys at the time.
The loss of Bismarck prompted a change in German strategy, the Kriegsmarine abandoning Atlantic raiding by surface units. The victory also helped neutralise the propaganda value of the Nazi success in sinking HMS Hood. At a time when the USA was still neutral, it was politically important for Britain to assert its sea power.
With Bismarck settling on the Atlantic seabed, British commanders would turn their attention to her sister ship, Tirpitz, which would become the object of a series of British commando raids, mini-submarine attacks and airstrikes by both the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy.